What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pick Swap Media YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard, and I'm here today. We're past the halfway point of the NBA season, but approaching the All-Star break, what feels like the halfway, where there's a little break, little step back before that final push for the playoffs, and I'm here to recognize what's gone down in the first half. So let's dive into the top 5 surprises of the 2022-23 NBA season. Let's get it.
Check it out.
Step back, James Harden, right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey. Joel
All right, so there's a lot of positive things to choose from. Some notable storylines that have already manifested themselves in this first half of the season. And I'm gonna kick things off with number one. Lauri Markkanen is a stud. I've been a Team Lauri guy for quite some time since he come into the league. I have several articles out there asking the Sixers to trade for him, thinking he would be perfect next to Joel Embiid. But he has found his home somewhere else with the Utah Jazz and is absolutely having a terrific year this year. So just looking at him, a career high 24.9 points per game, also adding 8.6 rebounds, a career high 1.6 assists per game, shooting 41.2% on three-pointers on a career high 7.4 three-point attempts per game, also shooting 60.5% as an effective field goal percentage and 65.7% as a true shooting percentage, which are both career highs there. The Jazz have cooled off a little bit from what it was at the beginning of the year. They look to be a surprise team. They have come down to earth a little bit. Sitting at 29-30, dropped down to 10th in the Western Conference. Markkanen is also logging a career high 25.4% usage rate and tallying an 18.7% win shares per 48, which just means this guy is the real deal. So I'm happy to see him getting that true chance. He's absolutely delivering for this team. And they were obviously sellers at the deadline, sent out Jared Vanderbilt, sent out Malik Beasley, sent them to Los Angeles. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the year goes. I think they probably sink a little bit closer to the Wembanyama sweepstakes. I think they probably won too many games to truly establish themselves as a top lottery destination or give themselves high chances of landing that premier prospect that seemed to be the game plan coming into this year. But the bottom line is this is a team that is not as far off as it is once expected. Will Hardy's a terrific head coach. I'm a huge fan of what he brings to this team, what he brings as an identity, and I'm very happy to see that Lauri Markkanen is a key part of it. So hyped for him to have found his spot. That's been one of the best takeaways this year. They move on to number two, kind of related to the Jazz. Rudy Gobert sinks the Minnesota Timberwolves' chances. This has not quite worked out the way I think the Timberwolves imagined. And let's flash back to this trade here. Rudy Gobert shipped off from the Jazz to the Timberwolves in exchange for Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leonardo Bolmaro, Walker Kessler. It was the draft pick which turned into Walker Kessler, who you might be able to argue is having a better year straight up than Rudy Gobert. I think he probably definitely can. Jared Vanderbilt, a 2023 first-round pick, 2025 first-round pick, 2026 pick swap, 2027 first-round pick, and a 2029 first-round pick. That is a whole lot to give up for a guy who is obviously a three-time Defensive Player of the Year, has been an All-Star, one of the more impactful big men in the league, but it's just not quite working in Minnesota the way I think anyone imagined, both Rudy or the Timberwolves for sure. Looking at Gobert's contract, he's on the books for 5 years, $205 million. He's got a player option for the 25-26 season, but that's the soonest he's going to be free agent. So they are stuck with him for the next couple of years, and they're going to have to figure out how to make it work. Looking at his stats on the season, in his 30.4 minutes per game, he's averaging 13.2 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks. These blocks per game are the lowest since his rookie year, and some of that definitely has to do with the schematics of playing next to Karl Anthony Towns, playing next to just in this. The Jazz did a terrific job in their system of funneling everything toward Rudy Gobert, letting him be that rim protector, to be a guy that pulled the absolute defensive weight and kind of made up for a lot of guys who were kind of minus defenders around him. We're talking about the Joe Ingles, the Bogdanovich, all these pieces who weren't necessarily great in a standout spot. Rudy Gobert cleaned all those up, is not getting necessarily the same opportunity or the same responsibility with the Timberwolves, and it's kind of being exposed a little bit. He's a guy who's incredibly elite at what he does, but incredibly limited in the things that he can do, and that's being put on display. So it's going to be interesting to see how they shake out of it. The bottom line for the Timberwolves is their future is in the hands of Anthony Edwards, so it's going to be on him to kind of overcome this. But zigging and zagging as the NBA kind of shifts toward this guard-friendly, fast-paced style of play, three-point emphasis to kind of build up Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert, the Twin Towers era, is just not quite working for the Timberwolves. So there's going to need to be some changes. We'll see where they go from here, but definitely not working out as planned. Next, we're going to move out to the Western Conference to the Phoenix Suns, who have gone all in for this year. And how about an absolute I'm in play by new owner Matt Sheba, buying the team for $4 billion and in less than 24 hours trading for Kevin Durant? How about that? So looking at the trade that they did land for KD, which of course happened in the middle of the night, about 15 minutes after I fell asleep, so I was frustrated about that. But they sent Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap to the Brooklyn Nets for Kevin Durant. A trade that I do think works for both teams. I think the Nets got a little bit of a rebuilding process there. That was a ticking time bomb with how things were going. Kyrie had already been shipped off to the Mavericks, so they needed some sort of rebuild. Kevin Durant had requested a trade dating back to the summer. Clearly wasn't happy, so he gets out. They get some pieces to retool, and Bridges and Johnson's a great start for building a franchise. So good stuff there all around. And looking at this Suns team, who are of course all in on winning a championship. Let's look at the lineup of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Kevin Durant, Torrey Craig, TJ Warren, Josh Okogie, Jock Landale. There's some pieces there that can do some things. So I'm hyped to see the Suns go for it. They obviously were knocking on that door of winning a finals 2 years ago when they lost to the Bucks in the finals. And then last year, really a franchise-altering loss in the semifinals to the Dallas Mavericks, who just stepped on their throats in that Game 7. One of the most convincing playoff performances ever for the Mavericks. Just blowing them out start to finish. The Suns never being in that game. And that was something that just changes the direction of your franchise. There's still the weird ongoing situation with DeAndre Ayton, who I'm a big believer in Ayton's talent, but there's clearly something there from a personality or just the guys don't seem to really quite get along with him. His energy is not there on a regular basis, so it's not quite clicking with Ayton. That's something that's going to have to be explored down the line. There's Kevin Durant adding to this mix of personalities is interesting. Chris Paul has a strong personality as well, so it will be interesting to see how that works out. But I do respect that they're going for it, and they should. The Western Conference is pretty open this year. The Nuggets seem to be putting the piece together, are talented, but there's a lot for the taking. So the Suns are going to be right in for the running for it this year, and it's going to be fun to see how it works out. Next up, a little more negative twist. The Toronto Raptors are just stuck in purgatory, and it is just brutal to kind of watch how this is working out. A team that was building a culture. They've done a nice job kind of establishing. They looked like they were very much catering toward this style of player, the positionless, switchable basketball team with guys, when we look down the line of Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, good pieces and something of an identity, but it's just not quite working. They're sitting at 27-31. That's good for 9th place in the Eastern Conference. It's actually gone on a little bit of a winning streak to climb up to that. They were sitting toward 13th, 14th so for a good portion of the season. So they're starting to work back, and they should. And I guess what surprised me the most is them basically doing nothing at the deadline. They made one trade, which was to improve things. They traded Kem Birch, a first-round pick, and 2 second-rounders to the Spurs for Jakob Poeltl, who is a good center and a guy who developed in Toronto, a guy who did most of his development there, is familiar with the system. They seem to be planning toward inking him to a long-term contract. I do think this is a good move for them. He's a guy that definitely makes them better. But what I keep getting stuck at is this team just doesn't have enough talent to truly compete. I think Poeltl's a good add when looking at kind of the path through the East when you're going to be facing teams with legitimate centers like the Sixers. You're going to have to match up with Joel Embiid. Even the Bucks playing guys like Brook Lopez, who's been terrific for them this year. The Celtics guys like Robert Williams, Al Horford. You got to have a true big to kind of fight your way through the East. And Poeltl's going to try and be that guy. So I'm happy to see that for him. But I just don't think the bottom line is the top end talent of the year is there. There was a ton of interest in OG. They didn't end up shipping him off. He was a very good player, but one of these guys that is better in theory than in actuality. And unfortunately, I feel that way about a good portion of this Raptors team. So I do think it's time to sell a little bit. They're going to have to backtrack and get a true star. The only time they won a championship and really were ever contenders for it was because Kawhi Leonard came over for that one season. And Kawhi Leonard is obviously a game-changing talent that adds that to any team. But the core that they have in place behind them is just not quite good enough. So it will be interesting to see how they tread from here. they should be better than how they've looked this year. But right now, I think they're firmly stuck in purgatory, and they're in a worse spot than I expected to be at this point. And my last one, I have the Sacramento Kings being absolute must-watch television. This one has been a blast for me this year. I was pretty skeptical of the De'Aaron Fox or the Halliburton trade, sending him away from for Sabonis and making that happen, but it's absolutely working in a way better than I think. And a trade that works for both sides. Halliburton is a phenomenal player, developing into a top 15 talent pretty rapidly. But this Kings team is not missing a beat. I mean, looking at their record on the season, sitting at 32-24, which is good for third place in the West. They are leading the NBA in points per game. They're first in 2-point percentage, and both Sabonis and Fox are just looking every bit of all-stars. I know they didn't quite get the recognition that it was hoped, and De'Aaron Fox, especially, I think deserved to be there right away. He's a guy that took his game to another level this year in a way that I didn't think was possible. Looking at his numbers, averaging 24.6 points, 6.2 assists, 4.3 rebounds, 1.1 steal, just 26 years old. And Sabonis, just 25, averaging 18.7 points, 12.2 rebounds, and 6.9 assists. They got plenty of key pieces behind those two as well. We're talking about Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes. Mike Brown's done a great job as head coach. So this team really does have the pieces and is putting it together. So I'm very happy for them. Sabonis especially, I think, has really brought his climb. I think there's a real argument for him being that number 3 center in the NBA behind the Embiid and Jokic conversation. It's impressive the things that he can do without the ball as a rebounder, playmaking. So this Kings team is just absolutely electric to watch. Like the beam team, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, so I'm thrilled for the Kings. They are surprised, and I'm happy to see them escape that mediocrity that has been there for so many seasons. So still plenty of season to be written. It's going to be fun to watch, see what storylines come out of the second half. But these are my top 5 positive takeaways from this year. So yeah, shout out to the Kings. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk with you next time.